Shadajan ma'am and everyone in India who is present there. And it's my privilege to be here to chair this session of vulval disorders. I just want to know this. Yes. Vikrant, Dr. Kalpana ki slide de do.
Dr. Kalpana Pathak, as we had a telephonic conversation, if you remember, you had told me that एक गाजियाबाद में एक लड़की है उसको पकड़ो. She spoke very well, and so I had to trace her out. I had to trace out that ladki in Ghaziabad who spoke very well, and fortunately for me, I got her. And the very first conversation I had with her, she readily agreed at a very short notice. So here is Dr. Kalpana. Dr. Sujit, please introduce her.
Yes, and it's my privilege to invite Dr. Kalpana Pathak. She's a dermatologist. She's a dermatologist and she's been ex-assistant professor, NIMS, and Jaipur, and consultant dermatologist, Kaya Skin Clinic, and she's presently working as a private consultant dermatologist in RDC Ghaziabad, and she has done her MD from PGIMS, Rohtak, and MBBS from the Motilal Nehru Medical College, and her area of interest are hair disorders, pigmentary disorders, and pediatric dermatology, lasers, and dermatosurgery. And you're welcome, Dr. Kalpana, here on our platform of EDGF. Although we all know that almost every woman, not every woman, the 70% women in their any time of lifespan, they have present vulval disorders like irritation, itching. It's such a, looks like a very simple subject, but it is not easy to treat sometimes. So now we want to hear from you how should diagnose it, how we should manage it, and how we are going to give comfort to our patients who are constantly having the problem. Here's over to Dr. Pathak, Kalpana Pathak.
Good afternoon, ma'am. It's a pleasure and honor to be amongst you all. So I'll just have a small presentation on management of common vulval disorders. So the first disorder that I'm going to discuss is vulval contact dermatitis. It is vulval inflammation due to an exogenous agent which is acting as a primary irritant or allergen. Now, contact dermatitis in vulva, it is characterized by a poorly demarcated erythematous itchy rash. The common vulval contactants, these could be irritants or allergens. So, vulval contact dermatitis could be contact irritant dermatitis, where on exposure, patient can have immediate stinging, burning sensation. It is mostly caused by soaps, wet wipes, panty liners, sanitary pad, synthetic underclothes, chemically treated clothing, vaginal secretions, sweat, urine, lubricants, or perfumes. Now, vulval contactants can be allergens also, where the symptoms appear after several days of exposure. Most of the time, it is the medicine that the patient is applying which leads to contact allergic dermatitis. It could be the benzocaine or neomycin or chlorhexidine or propylene glycol in the medicine. Sometimes it could be because of the fragrant creams that the patient is using or because of the oil application. Now, how to treat vulval contact dermatitis? We have to stop contact with irritant or allergen. We have to tell the patient that whatever she is applying, she needs to stop it. We have to control inflammation with mild to moderate potency steroid cream. Now, whenever we have to use a steroid, we have to choose it specifically as per the condition. And we have to give it for 5 to 6 days, twice in a day, and then we can taper it to once in a day, and then we can stop. Sometimes, if the vulval contact dermatitis is severe, we have to use systemic corticosteroids. So how would we know that the contact dermatitis is severe? The area looks swollen, there is fiery edema, the area will sting a lot, and there can be oozy lesions. We have to break the itch cycle also. So there we have to write an antihistamine. In morning hours, we can give fexofenadine, levocetrazine, or desloratadine, and evening hours, we can give something which is relaxing and sedating. So we can give hydroxyzine or doxepin. Sometimes vulval contact dermatitis has a preceding or superseding fungal infection or bacterial infection. So we have to add the treatment for that also. So if the patient is having a superadded candidal infection, we can add fluconazole. And if there is any history of bacterial infection or superadded bacterial infection, then we can add some antibiotic. Second most common disorder is tinea cruris. Tinea cruris, it's basically ringworm of the groin area. It is also known as jog's itch. It is a superficial dermatophytic infection presenting as annular red itchy rash with peripheral scaling. Now I'll be showing some pictures so that you can have a better understanding of tinea cruris, because it is one of the most common disorders that we get to see in our day-to-day life. So this is a classical presentation of tinea cruris, where we can see a dry annular ring-shaped lesion which is present over the thigh area, and the scaling is visible only on the margin. Now this is a second picture. This is tinea cruris with eczematization. Eczematization means that the area of infection has become thick. As we can see at the margin, that the peripheral area is more raised and we can see more scaling. So this is tinea cruris with eczematization. It mainly occurs because of continuous scratching and friction. This is again very commonly seen in India, where the patient, they self-prescribe for tinea cruris. They keep on using a steroid cream, as it can be seen that the annular lesion of tinea is still persistent, but there is hypopigmentation and stretch mark formation. So this picture I've specially added that we should be knowing that no matter how severe tinea is, we should never go with steroid preparation. In certain conditions, we have to write a steroid antifungal cream, but if at all we have to prescribe it, it should be for a very short while, like let us say maybe for 5 to 7 days. So I'll just be discussing a condition where we'll have to use a steroid with antifungal. Now, this is a picture of tinea cruris with contact irritant dermatitis. This patient, she had tinea cruris and she had applied Xalim lotion, which led to contact irritant dermatitis. So this is one condition where we have to add a oral steroid or a topical steroid in combination with antifungal. Now, what is the treatment of tinea cruris? We can give oral antifungals like itraconazole, fluconazole, terbinafine. We can give topical creams. I'm just mentioning those creams that I prefer writing. It is ibuconazole, clotrimazole, sertaconazole. We should never add steroids unless it is specifically indicated. Now, coming to specific oral antifungals, like we were just having a discussion about the same. I need to go back on the previous slide, but I'm not. Okay. So the first drug that we very commonly write these days is itraconazole. Nowadays, what we have seen as skin specialists is that most of the patients, they respond beautifully to itraconazole and fluconazole also, but somehow the response to terbinafine is little less. So itraconazole is my preferred brand these days. I give it in a dosing of 100 mg. Morning and evening, twice in a day, and it has to be written at least for 6 to 8 weeks. If you're just writing it for 2 or 3 weeks, it's not going to work. There's going to be recurrence. Fluconazole is a safe medicine if the infection is very mild, and sometimes I write it in patients who are lactating because fluconazole is safe in patients. Terbinafine, we mostly, as a skin specialist, we reserve it for younger children. And it is a category B drug in pregnancy. So if there's a patient who's having tinea and she has come to my OPD and she's pregnant, then I would go with terbinafine. Topical creams that I've seen wonderfully give response. It is ibuconazole, clotrimazole, and sertaconazole. Clotrimazole and miconazole is again category B, so can be safely used in pregnancy. There are recent studies which say that topical creams, almost all the topical creams, they can be safely used in pregnancy. So nowadays, like we don't fuss more about topical creams. We can write whatever we want, just that we have to keep the patient under supervision. But as far as oral antifungals are concerned, if the patient is pregnant, we have to take care that we have to write category B drug only. Lichen simplex chronicus. It's basically a chronic eczema condition which is seen in the vulval area. It is characterized by refractory pruritus, hyperpigmentation, excoriation, and lichenification. It is characterized by itch, scratch, itch cycle. The more the patient scratches, the more the itching increases. So in this disorder, we have to break this cycle. Now, the cause of lichen simplex chronicus can be primary or secondary. primary LSC is when the cause is neurogenic or psychological, and secondary when it is secondary to some skin disorder. The diagnosis is mainly clinical. Now this is a picture of lichen simplex chronicus. As we can all see, the area is hyperpigmented. It has thickened a bit. The color has changed. This patch of depigmentation, it has occurred because of chronic scratching. So this can also occur in LSC. Now LSC is one condition where we have to give super potent steroids. Most commonly being used are clobetasol and halobetasol. So we have to start with a strong steroid cream like clobetasol twice in a day for 2 weeks, then once in a day for 2 weeks, and then alternate nights for 2 weeks. If it's severe or it is not improving in 2 or 3 days, and sometimes we need to add systemic steroids. Again, we have to start with prednisolone or methylprednisolone, and then we have to taper the dose. Like we can start with 20 mg once daily for 5 days, and then 10 mg once daily for 5 days, and then we can taper it to Monday, Wednesday, Friday for a week, and then we can stop. Again, we have to break the itch cycle. This can be done by adding an oral antihistamine like fexofenadine or desoratidine in morning hours, and something which is sedating in night hours like hydroxyzine or doxepine. The itching is more so in night, so we need to add something which is strong in night time. Now, sometimes, like I said, LSC can be secondary to some skin condition. So sometimes we have to examine the area, and we have to elicit from the patient also if there was any preceding infection. Sometimes LSC can occur secondary to a senior or ringworm infection. Sometimes it can be secondary to psoriasis or seborrheic dermatitis. So the medicines are added accordingly to the preceding condition. And then if the itch is mainly neurogenic, then we have to go with some tricyclic antidepressants. We can also add doxepine. So we can also add pregabalin and gabapentin, depending upon the severity of it. Patients in our OPD, they respond beautifully to pregabalin and doxepin. LSEA, or lichen sclerosus atrophicus. It is a chronic autoimmune condition that creates itchy, white, atrophic skin. It usually affects the genital and anal area. Anyone can get LSEA, but it is most commonly seen in postmenopausal women. Now, the symptoms of LSEA. People with mild lichen sclerosus, they may have no signs or symptoms. They can just have little depigmentation of the affected area. In symptomatic cases, we usually find redness, itching, which can be very severe, burning sensation, pain. The area becomes totally white, shiny, and thin, just like cigarette paper. There can be ulcerations and tear because of thinning of the skin. And sex becomes painful. So these are the clinical changes that we usually see. We get to see classic white or waxy papules and plaques. The erythema is diffuse. The surface becomes very thin, just like cellophane. And we can have figure of 8 or hourglass pattern. This pattern occurs because of resorption of normal architecture, scarring, burying of clitoris, scarring and loss of labia minora and majora. Treatment, again, it is one of those conditions where we have to write a potent steroid cream. So we have to start with clobetasol or halobetasol. If it's little mild, if the symptoms are not much, we can also use mometasone cream. Once the patient has responded, we can always taper the steroid cream. We can write a milder steroid like fluticasone or maybe desonide, and then we can start using tacrolimus ointment. So basically in LSEA, in my practice, I always start with a steroid. Sometimes it's clobetasol, sometimes it's mometasone. And once the patient has responded beautifully, we just change the medicine and we taper it down and we start using tacrolimus. So LSEA is something which is going to persist, and we have to tell the patient that lifelong she has to use a steroid cream off and on and tacrolimus ointment. Vulvovaginal candidiasis, it's a vaginal yeast infection, and it causes irritation, discharge, and intense itchiness in the vagina and vulva. Most of the times, it's secondary to Candida albicans, but sometimes vulvovaginal candidiasis is also caused by other species, which are non-albicans Candida species. And these infections, they tend to be resistant to treatment, they are more severe, and they are more recurrent. Now, what are the predisposing factors for VVC? It is prolonged course of antibiotic, pregnancy, diabetes, use of oral contraceptive pills, use of oral steroids, and frequent use of vaginal washes. Treatment again for VVC, I'm just mentioning what I use in my clinic. I usually go with fluconazole, itraconazole, topical creams, and sometimes pessaries. VVC, as far as VVC is concerned, like our dosing is little different from what we read in books, because what we have seen is that, like in books, they mention that if you take just 150 mg of fluconazole once, it treats VVC, but it doesn't occur. So what we do is, like, we usually write fluconazole 50 mg daily for 7 to 10 days. Sometimes we also write 100 mg daily depending upon severity for 10 days. And then we switch over to lower doses of fluconazole. Then we can use once in a week, 150 mg once in a week. Itraconazole, most of us have read about the 3-day course of itraconazole, where itraconazole is written as 200 mg PD for 3 days. But as such, it doesn't work. Like what I've seen in my practice is that it doesn't work. If we write it just for 3 days, somehow it recurs. So what we do is, like, we are using 200 mg morning and evening for 7 days. And then we switch over to fluconazole once in a week therapy. Topicals, what I found, my personal favorites are ibuconazole, fenticonazole, and sertaconazole. Patients that respond very well to these medicines. I never add vaginal washes. I always tell my patients to keep the area dry. Like most of the patients, they are in this habit of washing the area every time they use a washroom. So we have to tell them that fungus, it tends to occur more in wet and humid environments. So if you keep on washing the area and if you're not drying it, chances of getting VVC is more. VVC as such, it is not considered to be a sexually transmitted infection, but we usually prefer treating the partner also. Herpes simplex infection or herpes, like I just forgot to mention one thing. Sometimes LSCA, it's basically a depigmentation of the affected area. So sometimes patients, they also get vitiligo in that area. So how to differentiate between LSCA and vitiligo? Vitiligo is totally asymptomatic. There'll just be depigmentation. Patient may give this history that there was a small patch which has increased in size and the area has become white. But in LSCA, if there is extensive involvement, there'll always be associated symptoms of itching, burning, and atrophy. Now coming to herpes simplex infection. Herpes simplex infection is also known as herpes genitalis. It can be primary herpes infection, it can be secondary episode, or it could be recurrent herpes also. So primary herpes, it is basically characterized by, when primary herpes means that the patient is having first episode of herpes simplex infection. The first episode is also characterized by systemic features, like patient can have fever, body aches, malaise, and local features are presence of clustered small blisters, which are usually painful, and then they ulcerate. The affected area, it can have itching, dysuria, they can be increased vaginal discharge. Patient can have enlarged lymph nodes in inguinal area. They can be bleeding also. Now, the lesions of primary herpes, they tend to long last. They can last for 15 to 20 days. And the shedding of virus, it can last for 2 to 10 days. While when the patient is having recurrent or secondary episodes of herpes, the symptoms are very mild and localized. Patient, they usually have this numbing sensation, tingling or itching in the affected area, which is later on vesicles ulceration occurs, but those ulcerations, they are very superficial erosions. So recurrent episodes of herpes, they are virtually painless most of the time. Sometimes patient can have painful lesions, but most of the time it is a self-limiting disorder and it is like for a shorter duration. Now these are two pictures. Like the first picture here, we can see clustered vesicles. The vesicles are intact. And like this picture, we get to see mainly in primary episode of herpes simplex. And these are superficial erosions. They are more commonly seen in secondary herpetic episode. Now, one condition that we need to differentiate from herpes simplex infection is herpes zoster virus infection, which is known as herpes zoster, which is varicella zoster virus infection, which is known as herpes zoster. So, herpes zoster has a different presentation. Most of the times, herpes zoster is seen in the thoracic dermatome, but sometimes it can also involve our lumbosacral dermatome, and then it can occur in vulval area or the perineal area. Now, in herpes zoster, the pain is debilitating. Patients, they complain of severe pain. The blisters, they tend to be intact. Erosions are not normally seen because blisters are little deep in herpes zoster. So you can differentiate between herpes zoster and herpes simplex infection by looking at the picture of the blisters, and also with pain, because pain is more in herpes zoster and it tends to involve that particular dermatome, while the pain in HSV infection is basically localized at the area of erosions. How to treat HSV infection? We basically add antivirals. Most commonly used antivirals are valcyclovir, famciclovir, and acyclovir. I prefer writing acyclovir because I find it to be like patient, they get better response with acyclovir, and it is cheaper also. So the protocols for herpes genitalis treatment primary episode is acyclovir 400 mg 3 times in a day for 7 days, valcyclovir 1 gram orally twice in a day for 7 days, or famciclovir 250 mg orally 3 times in a day for 7 days. Personally, I prefer writing acyclovir more. If a patient is having a secondary episode of herpes infection, if the dosing remains similar as primary herpes, just that the duration is reduced, we can write acyclovir 400 mg TDS for 5 days. Now, what is recurrent herpes genitalis? We have to educate our patient that if they are getting more than 6 episodes in an year, it is recurrent herpes genitalis, and in such cases, we have to write a suppressive therapy. So suppressive therapy is acyclovir 400 mg BD, or valcyclovir 1 gram orally once in a day, or famciclovir 250 mg twice in a day. Acyclovir has safety studies for 6 years. There are many studies which say that for recurrent severe herpes, acyclovir can be added for 6 years. Valcyclovir and famciclovir, the studies are there only for 1 year. Most commonly in my practice, I have written acyclovir. Like if we write it for 1 year time, patients mostly respond well to the treatment. Now, genital warts. Genital wart or condyloma acuminata, it is secondary to HPV infection. It is most commonly caused by strains 6 and 11. These are non-oncogenic types. These are usually seen at the areas affected by coitus. Recurrences after treatment are secondary to reactivation of subclinical infection. Vikrant, you need to change the slide because I'm not able to do it. Please switch over to second slide. Okay. So on the left, these are pictures of cutaneous genital warts. The lesions are dry, they are well defined, discrete. And in the second picture on right, these warts are florid and they are also involving the mucosal area. Change the slide. Okay, so the treatment for genital warts, I'll just be mentioning what treatment options are available and what we commonly use in our OPDs. So the treatment which is available for genital wart is cryotherapy, podowart or podophyllin resin, trichloroacetic acid, electrocautery, laser we rarely do. So these are the common procedures which are available. But in OPD, most of the times we are doing TCA application, cryotherapy, and podowart or podoflotoxin application. There are certain off-label uses of drug which have shown wonderful response in anogenital warts. So isotretinoin is one of them. Hydroxychloroquine is one of them. Then we have intralesional vaccine therapy, where we, like, if the patient is not responding to these conservative therapies that are, like, I've just enumerated, then we can also do intralesional MMR therapy. So MMR therapy, we have to do 3 sessions. We have to inject the MMR vaccine into the bigger warts. Like 0.5 ml can be injected in one session. The sessions are done 1 month apart, and 3 sessions can be done. And I've seen wonderful response in those patients who are not responding to conservative therapies to genital wart. If there is a patient who's having genital wart in pregnancy, then we can do cryotherapy or TCA application, because rest of the procedures are not safe. Electrocautery is safe, but because it is painful, so we don't prefer doing it in pregnancy. There was a slide in previous presentation by Dr. Chawla. There was one thing, like, I beg to differ. I was just reading the slide. It was mentioned that if the patient is having genital wart, so it's an indication for cesarean. No. If a patient is having genital wart, it's not an indication for cesarean, even if the patient is having warts and if it is not multiple. Like, I'd shown 2 pictures. There was one picture on the left where the wart was discovered, and there
आलू छील देना,
let it be,
और टमाटर काट देना अलग.
later on. Cesarean is indication for genital wart only and only when the warts are too much, and when it is so used that it is obliterating the vaginal opening. So this is what we have read in our books, and whenever, like, a derma opinion comes for genital wart, and whenever it is being asked by the gynecologist whether she can go ahead with cesarean delivery or not, then as a dermatologist, I always tell them that even if the patient is having wart, they can always go with cesarean delivery, provided कि warts इतने ज़्यादा ना हो कि वो जो opening है genital opening उसको block कर रहा है. So molluscum contagiosum, it's another viral infection which is caused by molluscum contagiosum virus, and it is characterized by skin-colored or pearly white umbilicated papules. Now, what I've seen in my OPDs, like whenever I'm getting referrals from my gynae colleagues, most of the time they are confused whether it is a genital wart or it is molluscum contagiosum. So in molluscum contagiosum, what we need to understand is that there are usually white-colored or skin-colored umbilicated papules. So this is something which is very important. While in warts, the lesions are mainly like, they are florid, they are growths. Sometimes they can be cutaneous lesions, they can be skin-colored, but there is no umbilication. So this is the picture of molluscum contagiosum, where the lesions are mainly, we can see these are papules, these are skin colored, and there is umbilication in the center. This is a picture of my patient. She had extensive molluscum contagiosum. And again, she was applying some irritant just to get rid of this. So that's why she was having redness. So the redness was treated first, and then because it was extensive, so I had to remove it. Now, what are the procedures that we commonly do in our clinics? We commonly do curettage or needle extirpation. Molluscum removal is very simple. We just have to apply a numbing cream, and then we can just use a needle, and we can remove the molluscum bodies. It's little time consuming, but it gives wonderful response. Healing usually occurs in 2 or 3 days. If we are doing electrocautery, it's a faster procedure as compared to needle extirpation, but healing takes 7 to 10 days. So personally, I prefer doing needle extirpation. Cryotherapy is another procedure that we do in patients who are having extensive molluscum lesions. There are other options also for topical treatment also for molluscum contagiosum. We can give salicylic acid, we can give tretinoin cream, or we can also give imiquimod cream. 50% of patients, they respond to imiquimod cream. It gives wonderful response. Now, I have completed the vulval disorders that I feel were important to discuss. But I'm having few other slides about topical steroid use, because in 2 or 3 conditions I've mentioned that we have to go with potent steroids. So we have to educate our patients about how to use topical steroids, what are the side effects that we need to look for, because many a times we have to write steroids, but the moment we start seeing side effects of topical steroids, we have to stop. Like in a slide of LSC, I had mentioned that we have to use clobetasol for 2 weeks. So I had mentioned it in most of the patients I use it to. But many a times I have seen it, like I have written a steroid and patient had hardly used for 7-10 days and patient has developed side effects of steroids. So if it's occurring, we need to taper it down and we need to stop it. So what are the common side effects that we have to see in our patients? It is epidermal atrophy. Epidermal atrophy is basically superficial atrophy. There will be slight change in the skin texture. The skin will become slightly shiny and wrinkled. It is something which is transient and temporary. If we start, if we stop the topical steroid use, it will reverse on its own. But if the patient has used topical steroids for a long while, let us say maybe for 1 month or 2 months, then the dermal atrophy occurs. In such cases, it is accompanied by hypopigmentation of the area, and like I've shown a picture of tinea cruris where the patient was having hypopigmentation with striae. It was basically dermal atrophy. So this is something which is not reversible. If it has occurred, it's going to be there. So basically we have written steroid to a patient. We have to keep on seeing whether the patient is having side effect or not. So we have to examine the area. Now, the third common side effect is telangiectasias. These are basically the blood vessels which are present underneath the skin, and they have become prominent just because the skin has thinned out. Now, one of the most common things that we see with topical steroid is steroid rebound dermatitis. It's very common. Many a times patient is using, like in India, patient uses steroid for everything. If they're having acne, they'll use a steroid. If they have melasma, they'll use a steroid. If they have some eczema, dermatitis, fungal infection, they're going to use steroid. So what happens is, if the patient keeps on using steroid for a long while, and all the changes like talking has set in, then the area becomes, and when you stop the steroid, the patient always comes back with a complaint of redness, irritation, burning sensation. So many a times you will see that we have a patient of vulvovaginal candidiasis and the patient has been using clotrimazole with beclomethasone. Patient has used it for 4 or 5 months. And the moment you stop it, पेशेंट कंप्लेन्स की डॉक्टर जब तक यूज करे थे, आई हैड वंडरफुल रिस्पांस, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं थी. जैसे ही बंद करते हैं इस एरिया में रेडनेस आ जाती है, इट स्टार्ट्स इचिंग. सो प्रॉब्ली इट्स नॉट रिकरेंस ऑफ फंगल इन्फेक्शन, it is steroid induced dermatitis. So we have to always be very cautious when we are writing steroids. If we, at all we have to write a steroid cream, we should not give it for more than 5 to 10 days, especially in mucosal areas. Now, whenever we have to prescribe steroid cream, we always have to give specific instruction for its use. We have to tell the patient how much to use and where to apply. We always, we should always demonstrate them how to use a steroid cream. I always tell my patients, I just don't open the tube or tell them, but I just tell them ki this is a 30-gram pack and you have to finish it in 15 to 20 days. उससे पहले खत्म नहीं करना है. अगर उससे पहले you are finishing off, that means कि आप ज़्यादा apply कर रहे हैं. So that's how we tell them, because in skin, we use steroids a lot. Most of the skin conditions, barring infections, we have to use steroids. So we have to be very cautious how we are writing it and how we are explaining it. So this is something that we need, that needs proper counseling. So whenever you are writing a steroid, you have to counsel it to the patient, especially when you are writing an oral steroid. You have to tell the patient that if you are taking oral steroid, it's not a medicine for self-prescription. जितने दिन के लिए लिखा है, उतने दिन के लिए ही खाना है. And you can have the side effects. I always tell my patients that they can have ulcers, they can have bone fracture, they can have high BP and sugar if they are using oral steroids for a long while. So when you explain the complications that the patient can have, they are usually a little scared and then they don't self-prescribe.
When can we stop it at this time, because we will have the second presentation.
Sure, ma'am. This is the last slide.
Okay.
It's all done. So how much to apply? We all know about the fingertip unit. Fingertip unit is the amount of steroid that we have to use starting from our tip till the first crease. So when you have to apply in the vulval area, we just have to tell the patient that it should be 1/4 of the fingertip unit, or you can just tell the patient pea size amount is sufficient for the area. So this was all about my presentation, and I hope it has helped you. If at all there is something like that I need to answer, I'll be more than happy to answer it. Thank you.
I think Kalpana, you did a great job.
Thank you.
Just a couple of questions, ma'am. Can we please have them? So what my colleagues are wanting to know, what is the name of the TCA preparation you use in the market?
Ma'am, TCA is not available. Basically, it's available as a crystal, so we have to prepare our own solution.
Okay. And you mentioned about the use of clobetasol, that is a potent steroid. So when we start tapering off, we use another steroid. So what will that option be?
Yes, ma'am. See, like you have to use like one indication where you have to start with a potent steroid is LSEA. There you have to go with a potent steroid. It's mentioned in books also that whenever you have to write a potent steroid, it has to be clobetasol in lichen sclerosus atrophicaus. So you can just start with clobetasol twice in a day, taper it to once in a day. Then you can switch over to a milder one. Like you can switch over to mometasone, then fluticasone, and then desonide. So our basic idea is to stop the steroid anyhow. You have to tell the patient कि अभी start किया है, धीमे-धीमे taper करके we'll stop, and we have to maintain the patients on tacrolimus. As far as, because tacrolimus has effects like, it's basically a steroid sparing agent. The results are just like steroid, but it is a steroid sparing agent. It won't cause any side effects.
Here, Deepika, Deepti, I want to tell you is that, see, whenever you are finding a chronic problems which need to be managed by the dermatologist, it should be referred to dermatologists. Yes. Gynecologists can't become dermatologists, and dermatologists should also not become gynecologists.
So thank you, Dr. Kalpana. Wonderful presentation, and thank you for us. I'm sure small little tips like the fingertip unit, show them the vulva, tell them where to apply, how much to apply, and she has to come back for continuous reviews so that you know that she's not overusing it. And the second tip was 30 gram ki tube hai, it has to be used in so many days.
Yes.
So these are wonderful tips for our practice. And thank you so much. If there are more questions, I think we'll have after the third talk. We invite Dr. Renu Chawla again. She will be speaking on pregnancy-specific skin problems. Dr. Renu Chawla, please.
Yes. And Renu Chawla, खाली 20 मिनट में खत्म करना.
जी मैम.